Hello everyone. Have you ever seen a commercial that says something like 9 out of 10 people saw great results? Well, that sounds pretty convincing, right? But what if the company only asked 10 people who are already super likely to love and purchase the product? It's a classic example of something called cherry-picking fallacy. It's when someone picks only the facts and figures that make them look good, conveniently leaving everything else out. And we see this everywhere. It shows up in the news, on social media, in school debates, and especially in politics. And the thing is, if we're not paying attention, we can get completely misled, or even worse, end up spreading half-truths ourselves. So I started noticing this more often when I studied how cherry-picking shows up in science and psychology, and what I found is it hides the full picture. But once you know what to look for, you can spot it, and that makes you a stronger, clearer thinker. So the main thing is that cherry-picking is a misleading fallacy that uses selective evidence to support a claim while ignoring facts that might challenge or weaken it. And I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. First, what the cherry-picking fallacy actually is and how it works. Second, how it messes with our understanding of science and psychology. And finally, how we can catch it and call it out in our everyday lives. So let us start by understanding what cherry-picking really is and why it's such a problem. Now, cherry-picking happens when someone only presents the facts that support their side of the argument, completely ignoring the stuff that might challenge it. From my first source here, which is Lucid Philosophy, gives us a great example of this fallacy. Now, imagine someone says, global warming isn't real just because we had one super cold winter. Okay, sure, that winter really happened, but they're ignoring the decades of research that shows the planet is actually getting hot overall, and that one cold season's real, but it doesn't tell the whole story now, does it? And that's exactly what makes cherry-picking so misleading. It's not necessarily lying, but it's not telling the entire truth either. And now we get an idea of what cherry-picking is, let's look at where we can actually find it dangerous, like in the fields of science and psychology where people trust the truth. So, the psychology department at Haverford College explains how cherry-picking is harmful in research. Now, in research, cherry-picking happens when people, or sometimes even the media, only highlight the studies that support their side of the argument and what they believe. They totally leave the studies that say something different to what they believe, and this gives the illusion that everyone agrees to it, even when they don't, which is a very big problem because this kind of selective reporting affects real-life decisions. Now think about things like public health policies, mental health treatments, or even school programs. People need to see the full picture to make the right decisions. But when research is cherry-picked, weak claims can look strong, and strong claims can completely be ignored, and that messes with trust. It makes it hard for regular people like us to figure out what's actually true and what's not. But this does not just happen in science or psychology. It's something we hear in everyday life too, from headlines to classroom discussions to casual arguments with friends. So the question is, what do we do about it? Now, according to my next source, which is Fiveable, the best way to deal with cherry-picking is pretty simple. Spot it and call it out. Cherry-picking isn't usually an accident, but rather a choice. Now, someone choosing to only show the evidence that supports their case and hide the rest is also particularly doing this. So if we want to be honest and clear, whether we're writing a paper or having a debate, we need to be present over there with both sides of the coin and not just a singular one. We need to be able to present all the relevant facts. So this includes diverse groups and studies, avoiding dramatic or exaggerated language, and using methods that are actually solid, like large samples or double-blind testing. So, in regular conversations, the trick is to listen carefully. Ask yourself, is this missing context? Are they skipping over counter evidence? Now, one of the big things you can do is check multiple reliable sources, and if it starts to sound one-sided, then it probably is. When we know how to spot cherry-picking and look for what's missing, we can protect ourselves from being misled, and that helps us communicate more honestly too. So, to sum our whole discussion up, first, we explored the cherry-picking fallacy and how it misleads by presenting only part of the truth. We started by defining what cherry-picking is and how it distorts arguments by leaving out the important counter-evidence. Then, we examined how it shows up in scientific and psychological research, where it can make weak claims appear stronger than they actually are. And finally, we explored practical strategies for identifying cherry picking, like watching for missing content, checking for counter evidence, and comparing claims with reliable resources. This fallacy might seem small, but understanding it makes a big difference. It helps us become better listeners, better readers, and more honest speakers. So the next time someone makes a bold claim, ask yourself, are they showing me the full picture? Or is it just the part that supports their side of the argument? Because when we start looking at the whole truth, even the parts we might not like or the parts that we might disagree with, we grow into better thinkers, stronger learners, and more trustworthy communicators. Thank you.